And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. We are back with more not so deep dives. We are on number 20 of 30. We are pushing through to the 2/3 mark. And this one is all about the New England Revolution with special guest Caleb Pongratz from Prost International. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be here and happy to talk refs.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's going to be exciting. We love a good chat about MLS, about the res. We love talking about it all, but what we love even more than that are soccer scarves. So for scarf of the week, what are you rocking today? I saw you had a couple there.
So I got two. I have a new Any Rebellion scarf. It's
Mhm.
one of their scarves from a couple years ago. It says as you could read here, "Rise
Yeah,
and Fight, Your Boys
nice.
in Blue." And on the back of the scarf, it has uh in the fine print, it's the flag of New England, but if you look into it, it has the names of every town of one of their members. So
Nice.
every town that's involved is there. And then so I have this scarf, which is great. And then I have another scarf that a couple of me and my friends made. We jokingly made a group a while ago called the Militia. So it's part of the rebellion now. So it's just
Cool.
another scarf. So
Yeah.
got a couple of them. I got that, and then reffing the TST jersey because why not? Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Man,
We'll
I
play
like it.
soccer today. Why not?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. As I mentioned to you right before we got going, New England is one of like three teams I don't have a scarf for. I've been picking them up as I've gone along. I've been doing this 6 years now, and I'm up to every I'm almost I think it's 28. I was gonna count tonight actually, but I do have one that I think is rather fitting considering half of your team seems to have played for this team last year, and that is the Quakes. San Jose. It was really funny because we actually did San Jose earlier today. So it was kind of proper timing. But
Proper timing.
yeah, one of the craziest things, man, is that I've never seen two teams just back and forth so crazily. And what's funny is that they were very similar teams in 2024 because if it was not for San Jose, this team would have been the worst defensive team in the league. And in 2024, they are currently the top three worst defensive seasons of all time, if I remember correctly, which is mind blowing to me because Caleb Porter, not usually something you associate with some of his teams. And it
Hmm.
seemed throughout the year he had issues in the locker room, arguments and disagreements with lots of players that kind of leaked out into the media. Those players are out the door, and he's kind of rebuilt this side with the players that he wanted, many of which come from San Jose, which is an interesting place to pull from. But after starting the season in Champions Cup and making a decent run to the quarterfinals, they lost 9-2 on aggregate to Club America, which is not something to, sniff your nose at because Club America, half decent side. But that kind of set the tone for the rest of the year, making it out of their Leagues Cup group. They lost in the first round in New York City on penalties before finishing the season 14th out of 15th place in the East. In 2025, of course, they're going to look to do a little bit better as they take place in MLS and in the US Open Cup. But I wanted to ask you your thoughts on 24. Was it something you expected going into the year? Where did this team sit with you in 24?
So going into 24, a lot of people had bold ideas about the New England Revolution. I thought they would make the playoffs, but I was more realistic. I was more thinking it was we're gonna make the play-in game or be that last seed. But unfortunately, results just didn't go our way. As you've mentioned already, there were a lot of arguments that leaked out. You could tell that there was tension building. Players were angry about their time. Some players went out on loan. Other players, it just became a pecking order, and everything just went downhill. Really, I don't think this team has really recovered since the end, since September of 2023. If I wanted to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously you brought up San Jose already, so the man over there is probably responsible. Partial, well, not responsible, but him leaving is the biggest
Yeah.
downfall. But yeah, I mean, it's a shaky year. I think 2025, the sites are looking better so far, but it'll be dependent on this extremely very different group is gonna whether or not they're gonna make a difference. Like there's a huge roster turnover, so let's see how the season goes.
Yes, and we are going to get into all of that. Lots of turnover, lots of players in, lots of players out. And by a lot, I mean a lot. Like there are like probably top two or three in the league so far in terms of additions, number wise. Who is the best one that they brought in so far for you?
I would say it's hard not to say that Leo Campagna is not the biggest addition. The Revs got a massive trade with Inter Miami to bring him over. I believe it was up to 2.5 or $3 million is what it could potentially rise to in general allocation money. Two international roster slots, like it's a massive deal, one of the biggest. And then the following week, Jesus Ferreira got dealed, so then that came into the same question. And if you're comparing the Jesus Ferreira deal to the Leo Campagna deal, the Revs made out really nicely. I think Campagna was one of the players in the league that struggled when it came to expected goals, but also still netted, if I'm not mistaken, 8 goals and 3 assists in 28 appearances with Inter Miami, and only 14 of those were starts. So kind of just looking at him as a player, like he's going to come to New England, he's going to blossom. I think if he stays healthy, that's the biggest key. If he stays healthy, he will thrive. He's going to be the striker that Caleb Porter wanted Giacomo Vrioni to be, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously that didn't work out. And I think Campagna coming in, like he's the expected starter. I'd be shocked if he's not the starter going into it. The Revs have made a couple other signings as well, but I think Campagna's the guy. Tom Bourguer said it best: "Good players cost money." Campagna is a good player; he costs money. That's kind of how it is, and I think he's going to make the biggest impact to this team.
Yeah, and I think it's a really, really good shout, right? The role of number nine in that team was such a question mark going into the last couple of seasons, right? You paid DP money for Vrioni, didn't pan out the first year. Okay, well, is this going to be the year for him? Doesn't look like it. Oh, is this going to be the year? Like, there's always that question of like, what are we doing here, right? I wanted to go in a different direction because of the back line issue we were just talking about, and I'm really, really interested in the addition of Mamadou Fofana. Comes in with a lot of really good experience from France. He's a full international for the Malian national team, and I think that that is a really good step in the right direction from day one. Like I don't think that it's going to be like, he's a U22 who's got 1,700 pro minutes and he might be good one day. I think he comes in like instantly. It's like we're going to change this the way this works. So I'm really really interested to see how he can get on in New England.
Yeah, I think Mamadou Fofana from Amiens SC, great signing. The Revs got him for 1.7 million. It says undisclosed, but $1.7 million. 26-year-old, has the European and international experience, as you said. He's played in Turkey, he's played in France, represents Mali. Caleb Porter's been very hell bent on telling the media about his size, the athleticism he has, the composure he has on the ball, his strong mentality. It's no doubt that he's going to be that starter. And another center back, if we're going down that line, that New England's pairing him with more than likely is Brian Ceballos. They signed him from Fortaleza for 1.8 million. He's a 23-year-old. He's signed to a TAM contract. He's got 100 games of experience across 7 seasons where he's played in Ukraine, Brazil, and Colombia. And similar to Fofana, Porter's already talked about his athleticism, his aerial ability, his concrete composure on the ball. So when you look to pair these two together in this new back line, it's going to be interesting to see their dynamic and how they work off of each other. The one concern I have about these two together going into it is there is a language barrier.
Mm-hmm.
However, we've seen this work before where obviously it's football. You're playing soccer. You don't really need to talk at times. But these two are already learning off of each other throughout preseason, and I think over time we'll see how well they do together. But I think it's a great pairing going into the year.
Yeah, and I like when people say that a lot, right? Like, oh, there's a language barrier. It's like football is its own language. I mean, you
Yep.
have this, there's a small part of it where it's like, yep, you're right. I can't tell you, hey Brian, turn around. There's a guy right on your back, right? But it's not as big of a gap as I think a lot of people think. So it's really going to be interesting to see how that pairing gets on, especially like we mentioned, for how I'm going to use the term disappointing for how disappointing they were last year defensively, right? But for all of those players coming in, there had to be some give and take there. So players have also left. Some have gone all the way across the country. Some have gone into other countries. Who is the biggest loss for you this year?
Biggest loss for me this year would probably be Dave Romney. Even though he is a defender and he was a part of that group that allowed 74 goals last season. Dave Romney's been defender of the year for this team the last 2 years in a row, as voted on by the media. It's no shadow of a doubt that he's been the best defender and he makes the biggest impact. He's a he's an Iron Man. He's literally like the guy and probably would start on a lot of MLS rosters, but things went bad for him in New England. I mean, in April of 2024, Caleb Porter was looking to trade him for as little as $50,000. Like I have sources that confirm that. Tommy Quinlan from WPRO has also said similar things regarding Dave Romney, and I think him being involved in the trade to San Jose, which I assume we're going to get into in a little bit, it had to be done based on the salary that he was on. It hurts. I think he's the biggest impact of the group that left, but of all the people that did depart this season, like it was needed. It was very, very needed.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess it'd be interesting to take, get your take on this as a a supporter and covering the team. When you're doing this full switch to switch from one team to another, getting players to and from San Jose, like how did that sit? Like it's not like you're pulling these guys from Miami or Columbus, like San Jose was equally as sketchy for defensive reinforcements and things like that. How did that sit with you or with the New England fans? How did that, how is that going over right now? And you know, does it make sense?
For the first trade, so that was Romney, Mark Anthony Kay, and Ian Harkes. They were
Mhm.
traded for a 2025 international roster slot, $250,000 in 2025, and then $250,000 in 2026. That's a deal that really needed to be done. New England was heavily against the cap. So from moving on those three players while also acquiring $500,000 in GAM and a 2025 international roster slot, they got off Mark Anthony Kay's salary, which was $750,000 last year, Dave Romney's salary, which was $721,000 last year, and then Parks, which was 287,000 roughly. Uh, so you're getting almost $1.8 million of salary off of your budget while also recouping $500,000 in GAM. So moving those guys off was kind of smart. It's a salary dump. I think Harks is the one in that group that you're kind of like, why did he have to go based on salary number wise?
Mhm.
And then also they traded Earl Edwards Jr. to San Jose, and we got $150,000 in GAM for him. So moving him on, Earl was going to be the backup regardless. He was on low money to begin with, but to get $150,000 for Earl Edwards, who played, if I'm not mistaken, 2 games last year, which were the games against Club America, where he allowed 9 goals in 2 games. So that's fine. I think that's a good move. You're getting money, you're recouping your losses. And then in the offseason, you pick up Tanner Beeson, defender, veteran. I think he's a great pickup. He's probably going to be in a depth role, which makes sense. And then you have Jackson Ewell. Jackson Ewell was the captain of San Jose. So he's done 7 years out in San Jose. He's a veteran midfielder. He's more than likely, in my opinion, going to start next to Al Hassan Yusuf and take over Matt Polster's starting role. So I think that's a great pickup. Jackson Ewell is probably one of the better free agent pickups that we had this year, and I think it will be interesting to see how they fit in right away. Fans at the beginning were disappointed for Romney being moved, specifically, and then they were skeptic of Jackson Ewell being signed. So a lot of questions that we want answered or that the fans want answered is their salary. Is what is Jackson Ewell on for salary? If I'm not mistaken, he was close to $1 million last year, but I don't know if he's going to be similar to what he's at now. I would assume he's on lower salary based on what happened in San Jose last year. I think a lot of these guys are going to be on lower salaries,
Mhm.
but I think overall it's interesting to see, but again, only time will tell for this group.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and that's kind of the thought process I was going with. So I'm glad we're on, as an outsider, I'm glad we're on the same page there. I
Yeah.
also mentioned the loss of Esmir Bajraktarevic, right? The a player who maybe not so much in terms of numerical output, right? Goals and assists, goal contributions, but somebody that you could watch play and was like, Yeah, this guy's got something good, right? This guy's going to be special one day. You saw him play for the national team. You saw him do a whole bunch of really good things in New England for a team that didn't have a lot going for it. I think he was going to move eventually, and I'm kind of glad that he went where he went. I think PSV is a good spot for him. But you know, he was kind of your most exciting attacking player, I guess, from an outsider's point of view. And I think you're just going to miss that because he made things happen out of not much. And it'll be interesting to see how he gets on in Europe and such, but also how you replace him.
Yeah, I mean, Esmir's kind of one of those players that you look at and you see something special in him, like you said. But I think New England kind of knew that it was time to move on from him. And I think it's a smart move for them to move on from him right now. So the fee was around 3.2 million, the initial fee, and it will rise to up to 6. And then New England has a future sell-on fee for Esmir. So I think it's a great deal for both parties. PSV gets a very young, attacking hungry young player that is expressive when he's on the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas New England recoup $3.2 million right away. It can rise up to 6. They have a future sell-on fee. And a lot of people forget to realize Tomas Chancalay is coming back from a torn ACL. So he'll be back in late April, early May. So once Chancalay comes back into the lineup, it's going to be difficult if Esmir was still here to get playing time. Because Tomas Chancalay is a designated player. And Esmir is not going to start over Luca Langoni, who the Revs signed for $7 million, who's also on a U22 contract.
Right.
Now, adding on to Esmir, and this moving him on, the Revs also were rumored at the same time to sign Ignatius Ganago on loan, which has now been completed. So that's even more competition for that spot. And I think New England kind of took this example and looked at what has been happening with Noel Buck. Noel Buck has been sent on loan to Southampton. It didn't work out for him. While he was at Southampton, he didn't get called up to the England camp once. He's kind of stuck in purgatory right now. So the Revs kind of, I think, made the right decision and thought, hey, we have a guy who's worth money. We need to sell him now, get the best out of it, and move on. Where Noel Buck, they're now stuck with him. Noel Buck wants to go back to Europe. He does not want to be in New England. It's blatantly obvious. And he's a player that a year and a half ago was worth $5 million, and the Revs held on to him and didn't sell him. I would be shocked if they got more than $2 million for him at this moment. But again, moving it back to Esmir, good player. He did his best in New England. He made 51 senior appearances for the club. He had 4 goals, 4 assists. I think, again, good move for both parties, and I'm excited to see what he does for Eindhoven.
Yeah, man, and that's a really good point. Get it while it's hot, right? Because you don't know what's gonna. I think of the Dylan Barrero situation, right? A guy who comes in and is, lights out. I remember Barrero. We do when my co-host and I, who's not here today, we do right before the season. We do like a top 5 draft in each position, sort of thing. Like, who are the top 10 players you need to keep an eye on, and we do a little draft formation. And Barrero was like one of the first 4 picks off the board in the wide areas. And then down he goes with his knee and extremely unfortunate, but they get nothing out of him, right? You have a guy who then comes to be like, this guy could be the real deal. All it takes is one, right? So I think that's a really, really good point. You've got this idea, Esmir, when we do this segment last year, we have a thing called player to watch or breakout player, and Esmir was that player for almost everybody last year. That this is a guy who's going to break out. He's going to go out and be sold and make a big name for himself. And we were all pretty much right. But I want to know, who is that player right now for New England in 25? Who's the guy we got to keep an eye on to have a really big year?
I think it'll be dependent on if he keeps his starting role, but Peyton Miller, I think, is the easiest option. 17-year-old defender, plays for the U.S. youth national team. He was a starter last year and shined. The one downside going into this preseason, every game that's been played so far for the Revs, Will Sands has started at left back. He was acquired in a trade for DeJuan Jones that I broke last summer. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not Peyton keeps that spot. But again, he's 17. In November of this year, he'll turn 18. There's already been scouts looking at him. So he's a player that come November, offers can start coming in for him. or more realistically, he can get moved to Europe if he wants to. So he's a player to watch. He's talented. Whenever he played games for the Revolution 2, he played not only at outside back but also outside wing. So he is a player that is willing to get forward, drive forward, look to join the attack, look to build out, look to get crosses in. So I think he probably has the best future of any young player that we have currently. There's a couple of players in the Revs Academy that will be playing with Revs too that are really good, that are going to be players to watch in the future. Eric Klein and Demario McIntosh are two that are other players that should be watched. But when it comes to first team football, I think Peyton Miller is definitely that guy.
Yep, that's exactly who I went. I mean, they let go of DeJuan Jones, who is one of the top outside backs in the league, so that this guy could get space to play. Like that if that doesn't tell you how much they think this kid can play, you're not reading the message on the board, right? When you send somebody like DeJuan Jones out, and I know there was also a salary cap thing too, but it's quite clear that when they were looking to do a salary cap shed, and their first thought was, oh, we can let go of one of the best outside backs in the league because we got Peyton Miller. That's a really big, like put him on a platter. This is going to be the future, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be really interesting because I know he also picked up a bit of an injury kind of towards the back end of last year as well when he was getting those minutes. So, how can he get back into the starting 11 and how can he hold his own there is going to be really interesting to see. But I've heard the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
probably from you that on Twitter that this guy's got looks at him from a whole bunch of people. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But we get into 2025 here, and you know there are a couple questions still floating around, and people still kind of wondering certain things about this team. For you, what's the biggest question that's still left for New England that they need to answer?
I think the biggest question that needs to be answered is kind of on both sides of the ball is can you produce more goals going forward and can you prevent goals on the defensive end? Because this team scored 37 goals last year, which is absolutely horrible, and then let in 74 goals. That's even more horrible. Will New England's front three or front four really be able to work off of each other, find chemistry, and build something going forward? Because that was the biggest struggle last year, with or across the last couple of seasons with Giacomo Brioni. The Revs did not get the correct quality out of a DP forward, and they lacked goal scoring tenacity. And with Campagna now in this group, Chancalay coming back from injury, you have Ganago, you have Langoni, you have Carlos Heel. They signed Maxia Rudy to be an option off the bench as well. They have a lot of offensive threats now that are fitting the mend of what type of players they want, and it's can they connect? Now at the same time, their back line, two new starting center backs. You have Peyton Miller or Will Sands playing left back. You have Brandon By, and then potentially Eli Feingold, another U22 signing to play right back as well. So we might be going into this new year with a completely new back four and a different front three or an altered front three. So it's can this group find the ability to contribute off of each other? And I think it goes for the whole collective rather than just the offensive third and the defensive third. It's can they win each third of the field? Can they win the midfield third? Can they win the defensive third? Can they win the offensive third? So only time will tell, like I've said many times already in this draft, in this chat, but it's they need the production across the board.
Yep, and we'll hit on that for at least on my side here in a little bit, but my one question it evolves around Caleb Porter and what sort of buy-in can he get from this team, right? So last year we were just talking about it, he had all these new transfers and new players come in, and the locker room turned on him. Really, some of the older players that weren't his turned on him very quickly, and most, if not all of those players are now gone. So he's cleared out as much as he can from this locker room, but has he cleared it all out? Can he get these players to buy into what he wants to do with this team? Can he get them to buy into his vision? Because if he can't, we might be looking at 2024 repeated, which is never good for anybody, especially as poor as they were. So, really, really interested, especially from a coaching point of view, like how is he going to convince the team that because he didn't replace them all, he's still got a decent bit of players from last season. How can he convince the players in those locker room who watched player after player after player turn on him that he's still the right guy for the job? So it'll
Yeah,
be
and I think it's I think it's also the truth. Keeping not only keeping trust with the guys that were there, but also building trust with the new guys and
Mhm.
finding that chemistry throughout the preseason as well. Caleb Porter knows going into this year that his seat is hot. Like
Oh yeah.
he has a similar record. I can look at it in the stat thing. Give me 1 second, just so I have the exact numbers. Yeah. So if you compare records between him and Brad Friedel, okay,
Oh my
everyone
God,
knows
I forgot Brad Friedel coached in New England.
everyone knows about Brad Friedel, okay. In Brad Friedel's 1.5, 1 1/3 seasons, okay, Brad Friedel was fired in May of his second season, okay.
Mhm.
Brad Friedel had 12 wins, 13 draws, 21 losses. Okay. Caleb Porter has 14 wins, so he has 2 more wins, 5 draws. So Brad has 7 more draws, and 24 losses. So he already has more losses than what Brad Friedel had in all competitions.
Yeah.
Okay. So Caleb Porter knows that there is the potential that I'm going to give him May 17th when the Revs play San Jose Earthquakes. If they have a bad record going into that game, he won't be here. That's my honest prediction. His seat's on fire. But at the same time, Kurt Onalfo, the sporting director, his seat's also on fire. He's done well this offseason in getting rid of players. He was the whole reason Esmer Baratarbic even got to play into the system, into the academy, getting moved. He's done well this season. He's proven, hey, I'm willing to build this roster and spend it. But Caleb Porter now needs to use his team because he said it takes 3 windows to build his team. It's his team now. If he doesn't build this team and get the results, he's gone. It's the real honesty. You
Yeah.
need result. You need results. You need to build off of it, and the productivity on the field needs to change. And he himself has came out and said that he's apologized for last season to the fans. He wants a new vision going forward. He wants to write the team on the right path, and I think he will do that. But his productivity on the field needs to show it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good summary. So listen, we've talked about players in, players out. We've talked about people going to break out. We talked about big questions surrounding the team. Put it all into the formula, and what does the calculator spit out? Where is this team finishing in 2025 in the Eastern Conference?
Looking ahead to the team, I know New England did get better in my opinion, but a lot of teams also got much better. I think this team, for me, at this moment, floats between fifth or sixth place. I think that's a generous spot for them. They're entering this summer with 2 DPs, more than likely. With also 2 U22 signed. So I would assume, dependent on what the team's record and standpoint is going into the summer, where the roster stands, they'll decide which direction they want to go, whether they want to go 3 DPs, 3 U22s, or they want to go the 2 DP, 4 U22 route. One thing the team needs to look at towards the future is if Ignatius Ganogo plays 60% of the games, which is roughly 20 games for the Revs this season, he's automatically signed from his loan deal.
Hmm.
And if he is signed, he will be a DP.
Oh,
So if he's signed, he'll be a DP and take that third spot. So it'll be dependent on what do they see in Ganogo. Do they think that he's the guy? Or do they want to go a different route and pick up a different player and go a different option? So they're in the right spot. I think that they brought in the right number of players. They got rid of the right number of players. I think this team is a fifth or sixth place team right now. If they go out and sign another DP that is massively known, that could make the difference of jumping them into a 2 or 3. But
hmm.
do I think this team's going to go out and win the Eastern Conference? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
This isn't a team from 2021 that you were looking at. It's leaps and bounds better than everyone else. This is a fifth or sixth in a compact East that's going to be separated from fourth place to ninth is going to be separated by 4 points. Like it's going to be close, but I see them finishing fifth or sixth.
Yeah, we've been saying that with all of these interviews we've been doing. Or, the East last year was so tough to predict because there were like 8 teams who could finish in the top 4 realistically. Now it's really tough to figure out because there are 8 teams who can finish in the bottom 4 before you go into the home playoff games. Like 5 to 9, there are so many teams that feel like they've lost enough where they're going to be placed in there that it's going to be tough. I like the new roster build. I'm not going to buy super deep into it because I've seen this in a lot of teams, but mainly in DC, where DC goes in and buys 12, 15 players every window, and it's like, oh, this is finally it, right? Chicago, same thing, right? Oh, look at all these new players they brought in, they're finally going to get it, and then it takes 2 months for them to figure out how they're going to play together, right? I don't love I think Ivicic is okay, but I think he's up and down as a goalkeeper. Center back, I think they're promising, but still not like confirmed that they're going to be great. Um, I feel better than last year about their center mid spots as well as the attack. But my big hesitation is Caleb Porter. And I'm just not sold that he's going to get that buy-in that everybody's going to be looking for, which could be difficult for him. So I've got them pushing for the play-in game right now. And again, a very disclaimer: this is the 8th of February at 6:33 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right? So there are 2 months left in the window. Lots of things can change. But at this very moment, I've got them between 8 and 12.
Yeah, I think that's a sound statement as well. I think again the East is going to be separated by probably 4 points
Mm-hmm.
in every sliver. 1 to 4 will be 1 to 2 will probably be 6 or 7 points. Then from 2 to 4 will be 3 points separating them. 5 to 8 is going to be again 3 points separating those guys. It's probably going to come down to goal differential because I'm pretty sure it did last year.
Yes, yeah.
For the most part, and then 8, 9. I mean, as long as you're in, you're in. So
Right, exactly.
look at Atlanta.
Yep.
So I think that's an honest statement as well. I think it'll be dependent on if this group sticks, and
Yes.
only time will tell for that.
Yep. And we just did before we recorded with you, we recorded with Jose for Philadelphia, Jose Nunez, and we said the
Mhm.
same thing at the end where it was like I had Philly down like 11 to 15, but 11 to 15 because on the last day there are going to be 7 teams fighting for 8, 9. And they're just going to end up on the wrong side of it, right? It's going to be that tight. I couldn't agree with you more. Caleb, thanks so much for being here. We really enjoyed this conversation. It was very eye-opening to be able to have somebody who's kind of on the inside of watching everything develop and happen and break. I want to give you a minute here to tell people where to find you and what you do.
Of course. So again, my name is Caleb Pongratz. You can find my work either on Twitter at Caleb Pongratz 10 or on Blue Sky at Caleb Pongratz. Most of my work you can find at prostinternational.com. If you go to Prost International's webpage, hover over the MLS section, go to Eastern Conference, and then go to New England Revolution. You will find all of my work covering the New England Revolution. I also cover Rhode Island FC of the USL Championship, so you can find my work for them as well. And yeah, hope you guys can follow and support the work.
Yeah, and please do. Like I said, you're looking for breaking stuff. Like he's all on top
Yeah.
of it. He broke a couple things over the last season and a half. So go over there. You're gonna get some stuff right off the presses, as they say. So keep involved there. If you're new here and this is the first time you're listening to us, we've got 30. As you guys have seen, you guys are the 20th of 30 preview episodes with 30 different creators. So you guys are going to be able to get a deep dive or a not so deep dive on any team in the league, whether it be leading into preseason or if you got a game 3-4 weeks into the season, you want to know what they're about. We've got that for you too. So give us a follow and listen up to all those as well. But thanks everybody for listening. Caleb, thanks again for being here. We really appreciated your time, and we will see everybody on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.
Thanks for having me. See ya.